Thank you guys all for joining tonight. I know some of you, but not all of you. I'm Yafa. You all are here because you got my email, so I'm sure you know a little bit about what I do for Yachad. I coordinate the social work intern program and oversee some of our social work programs, and I offer support for any behavioral needs of our members and resources and referrals. And I am so lucky to work with Edith, who is my clinical supervisor and co-runs this group with me. Edith, do you want to say any words of hello?
Yeah, it's been several years, but for a few years I worked for Yachad, kind of before Yafa came on, kind of in her position. I'm much younger than she is, however. And so I've done a lot of supervision, which is what I'm primarily doing now, but I've been a clinical social worker for many decades, and I have had a concentration in folks and their families who have differing disabilities.
So Edith and I have been offering a bi-monthly parent support group, and it's been lovely. It's been small. So I think an angle we're going to take now is we're switching to monthly. So you can mark your calendars every first Wednesday of the month. And I looked at all the Jewish holidays, and we should be good for the next number of months. And it will not hit inauguration. So that's good. So we meet at 8:15, and we are open to just letting everybody have a space to vent and chat. But also tonight is a specific topic, and we have a new member parent, Elizabeth, that offered to speak tonight. If anyone in this group wants to present about something, because really you guys are the experts, and you have such a wealth of experience that we can share with each other. Please let me know if you would like to present about something that you've learned over the years. Or if you want me to get a presenter about a certain topic, I can also look into that too. So since there are 19 of us, I think I'm gonna skip intros just for the sake of time and go right. Is that okay for now? And go right to Elizabeth to hear her spiel, and then we will have discussion and time for questions after she tells us her story. Does that sound good?
Excuse me, should I be in gallery view?
That is up to you. I'll spotlight Elizabeth for you. And you can choose if you want to keep her spotlighted, or you can go to view and do gallery if you want to see everybody. That is up to you.
And then she's in the middle, is that correct?
Yeah, this is.
Yes, when you're in gallery view, Elizabeth will be in the middle, is that correct?
I'm not sure, but she should be big on your screen now because I just hit.
She is, yes.
Okay, great. All right, Elizabeth, you have the floor. I'm going to mute everybody for now, and you're welcome to unmute if you want to speak up at any point. Thank you.
Well, thank you for asking me to speak tonight, Yafa. I certainly don't feel like an expert. I, like all of you, am a parent of a special needs young man, and have just kind of had an interesting journey that sometimes it's helpful to share. But everything I've learned is really from other parents and people out there too. So I love the continual cycle of sharing of information. I know specifically there was some interest in housing, so that's what I'm going to talk about. And I'll try to give you all an overview and then leave most of the time for questions, because I find that seems to be what ends up running out of time at the end. But just a real brief overview to give you context. I have 3 children, and William is my son with special needs, although I also say he's my easiest in some ways. I have 2 typically developing daughters that flank him on each side. He is 26 now, and he has cerebral palsy, and he was born, he's had it his whole life, and it impacts him both physically, which is more obvious because he is in a wheelchair in the community. But the greater challenge is the cognitive developmental. His IQ, total IQ, is about 50, although he presents higher because he's very verbal. So people often think he's more like a 70, but he's more like a low 50. So just to give you context to compare. I also like to preface everything by saying this is my story. This is Will's story. This was our journey. And along the way, I've learned a lot about other models, but you know, everything is different in each individual situation. So I just like to preface that. So, you know, Will went through our town elementary school, preschool. At middle school, he ended up going to an out-of-district placement to the Cotting School in Lexington, if any of you are familiar with that school. And when transition came along, it became very confusing and overwhelming, and we did not feel that his needs were being met at Cotting. And we ended up finding another placement for him, which around that time, I started attending a lot of conferences, the Federation for Children with Special Needs, the ARC, a lot of the transition fairs, just to start learning information. And we also obviously did Will's vision statement, and he really kept saying he wanted to live out of our home one day. I don't know why he wouldn't want to stay in this room that's behind me, which was his childhood bedroom. He's obviously a sports fanatic, but that was a goal of his. And we certainly, you know, we have means, but not excessive. And I thought, how is this ever going to happen? And I started researching, as well as trying to figure out what his prioritization would be with DDS. He does get support through DDS. He did qualify for that, which I know. Actually, can everyone just raise your hand if you do get DDS support, either day or residential? Okay, so it seems like a fair number of you do. Okay, thank you. So during transition, his team recommended that he were in a residential placement, and we were unable to find an appropriate one. And, you know, during that phase, actually I just want one more raise of hands. How many of you have children that have already left their IDEA or out of education and are now adults in their adult life? Okay, so a little more than like 3/4. Okay, so a few. And the ones who didn't raise their hand, are you like in the late phase of transition? Late? Yeah, late phase of transition. Anybody with someone like under 16? No? Okay, okay, thank you. That's helpful, thanks. So we, when we started looking into the different models of housing, and I'm guessing some of you may be familiar with some of them, but many of them require you to have prioritization from DDS for housing. So Will did not get DD prioritization for DDS priority 1. He got no priority. He got 1 priority for day services, but nothing for living. And so we appealed that decision, and they moved him up to a priority 2, recognizing that one day he may need it, but that right now, while my husband and I are still alive, he's ours to figure out. We started out doing AFC in our home to get that revenue stream going. Is everyone familiar? Is everybody familiar with AFC? What AFC is?
I'm in Rhode Island, so we might have different terminology for the things that you're mentioning. So I'm
okay.
And I honestly don't know what it is.
Okay. So in Massachusetts, it's termed is, I think it's adult foster care, but the premise of it is that if you have your adult child living at home, and you are providing support for them, I think they have to be over 18, in your home, that you can get a stipend to compensate for the support that you're providing. And there are different agencies that provide the management. So a clinical social worker and a case manager come out, and the maximum amount in Massachusetts is $1,500 a month. The lower amount is, I think, $800. And there are some families who have put together group homes based on the AFC model and actually combine their AFC funding to create a revenue stream for staff with AFC. So AFC is a great resource for families looking for some funding that don't have support from DDS. And maybe when we're done with this call, Yafa, I can send you some links for everybody, a follow-up email that'll name the programs and give you a place to go to find it, if that would be helpful. Should have done that in advance, but next time. We met with many agencies, Till, learned about some of their housing models. We learned about shared living, which was the DDS Priority 1 model, which we knew we weren't going to have. What was really important for us, and someone great told me this, was instead of figuring out what are all the options for living, what do you know is going to work for William? You know, can he live with other people? Is he flexible with other personalities? You know, does he need to be near public transportation? You know, all those kinds of things. So that definitely factored in. When we had the AFC, we knew we would have that funding, and around the time he was finalizing his transition, we found out about an affordable lottery in our town for the purchase of an accessible, affordable condominium. There's something called the Department of Housing and Community Development, state agency. I'm sure they exist. It's a HUD program, so I don't know the names in the different states, but DHCD is the acronym. And they manage all the different types of housing. Some of you have heard of Section 8, I'm sure. Have most of you put in applications for Section 8 or familiar with it? And yeah. Anybody not familiar with Section 8? I'll get back to it, but we put in the application, but when we started hearing about this program in Wellesley, I looked into DHCD and I met with our state rep, and she explained to me the different tiers of housing. So there's basically public housing, which Section 8 falls into. Section 8 funding comes out of public housing. So there are different types of public housing complexes, but they're usually large with multiple people living there. You don't have a lot of control over necessarily who you're living with, but it can be a great situation. But we knew for Will, he gets very triggered by behavioral things. And also because of his very high verbal profile, being taken advantage of was also a concern. So being in a big, large collective situation we had concerns about it. The next level under low-income housing or public housing is something called affordable housing. And that's something I had never heard about and that is not talked about a lot in the seminars that I attended for housing. And it doesn't work for everyone, but if your child or loved one is able to have some income stream and has some part-time work and has SSI, there is a program that allows you to purchase and or rent at a drastically reduced price. And our loved ones are able to live in these homes, and it doesn't go against their $2,000 Social Security maximum amount that they're allowed to have. It doesn't count as an asset, so it doesn't prevent them from being able to qualify for all the other programs. I did not know that. You know, we had done estate planning, and I knew that Will couldn't have a lot of things in his name, but when we were told he could own a home and it could be in his name, and he can own a car and it can be his name, that was new information for me. So when we found out about it, we soon learned that there are many communities, particularly more affluent communities, that are way behind in the mandate for the amount of affordable housing that they should have. And so what's been happening in a lot of communities, I know it's happened a lot in Newton, in Weston, in Wayland, and it happened in Needham, and it ended up happening here in Wellesley, is that when developers come in to build new projects, one of the things that the town, typically will do is negotiate in some affordable housing into these projects. And it's happening more and more. And these affordable units, some of them again are for sale, sometimes they're for rent, but they're done through a lottery process typically. And there's an extensive qualification process. You have to provide a lot of information, but it's well worth it. And in our case, it took probably about 8 months to a year. But Will, who, just to give you context, at the time, he was only making about $6,000 a year and then had his SSI. And we knew he was young, so we projected that he'd probably end up making more like 10 or 11. So he just snuck in and they knew he was young. But they did accept him, and he ended up winning this lottery and was able to purchase a 2-bedroom, 2-bath condo. And he lives there. He's lived there for 5 years in downtown Wellesley, where we live. So it's a few miles from our home. And he qualified for a 2-bedroom because he needs a live-in caregiver, which needed to be documented that he had the need. He couldn't be alone. He needed the support. And so our plan, worst case scenario, to fund the support, was to use that AFC money I was talking about before. But it turned out we had never used PCA funding, but PCA actually can be a higher dollar amount. And so we applied for PCA and got approved. You can't have both AFC and PCA, but when we got approved for the PCA, we took that. So we've used a combination of a lot of different resources to fund this apartment condominium for Will. He has Social Security, obviously. He has some minimal part-time jobs, and then he has the PCA funding. He also has DDS, and we do self-direction. So we use that for all of his day support. And I'm actually in the process, we use MRC for some of his job stuff, but I'm in the process right now. MRC, I did not know this, actually has a supported living fund that we're now tapping into to get a little more support. And the roommate who lives with Will, he obviously gets to live there rent free, which is a wonderful thing to be able to offer someone, and gets a stipend on top of it of about $500 a month. Maybe actually $500 every 2 weeks. In our case, and everyone is different, for me, when I heard about shared living, which is a big model that DDS talks about, and again, we didn't even have priority one, so it didn't matter. The concept is that the person living with your loved one really does everything. And I thought, I can't do everything, and I'm his mother. How does this make sense? For some people, I know it works, but for someone who has a high level of need, shared living is too much. I think it puts way too much stress on one person, and it's too much, I think, for our loved one, for that one person to be doing everything. I do know of some successful stories, but I know of many more challenged outcomes from shared living. So my feeling was the person that lived with my son, I didn't feel like that person should be doing everything during the day. So we have other types of support and other programs that he does. So that's really where we're at right now. I think that I'm seeing a lot of confused faces, and I get it because I felt the same way. Because I don't know all of you and I don't know how much you know, I wanted to cut to the chase and tell you about the very unique model that we've created for William. But I'm happy to back up the bus and tell you about the other models I know about, tell you more specifically about this model, and just share anything that I know.
A few questions came in through the chat, so I'm wondering if we should start there. One question early on was, is the housing program related to Section 8?
Yep. So no, it is not. In fact, we had put in, when Will turned 18, his Section 8 application, which still I think is sitting there, but you cannot do both. So Section 8 is a separate program, and they would not, DHCD, the big agency, Department of Housing and Community Development, manages all of that, but you can't do both. So if you're in one of these affordable units, you wouldn't be able to use the Section 8 voucher as well. But Section 8 isn't for purchase, it's for rental. So I do know someone who has a son, my William's age, about his age, and he himself bought a condominium, a 2-bedroom condominium in Brookline, and was able to turn it into a Section 8 unit, and has his son and his son's girlfriend use their Section 8 voucher to pay the mortgage. So very convoluted and creative, but that is a way to turn, they paid fair market for that condominium in Brookline, which was a lot of money. Just to give you context, I don't mind sharing personal information. I mean, Will's condominium, the purchase price was $180,000 in Wellesley Center for a 2-bedroom, 2-bath condo, and the market rate is probably close to $1 million. So that's to give you context of how reasonable these affordable units can be compared to the for market. It's a great deal. They don't appreciate at the same level. They manage that. And if Will were to go sell it one day, he would only get what he paid and a little more. But our feeling is he has a roof over his head forever, you know, and a room and a way to get someone to help him forever. And that was really appealing.
Can I ask
Does
a question?
SSI count as an income stream? I just want to go through the ones in the chat.
Okay, sorry.
Yes, yep,
Yeah,
it did.
that's
So, but it wasn't enough. So if someone absolutely cannot work this, and there's no other income stream, this program unfortunately is not ideal.
What program is that? You mean the affordable housing?
The affordable housing program, correct. You have to have some minimum income, and you can't make more than a certain amount, and you can't make less than. And I think we just snuck him in. I mean, I will say I know a family that has a family business and put, you know, their niece on a payroll. So, you know, there are creative solutions to that, but you know, I think she legitimately goes in, but I don't know that she has the ability to do a lot, but they consider her an employee, and that gave her some revenue and did make it work. How do you match people for shared living? Like with everything in the adult service world, you know, there's the funding streams, and that's DDS and MRC. And then there are the agencies that subcontract with, I call DDS and MRC like the bank. There are agencies that manage shared living. So if you have priority 1 with DDS for residential for living, then you can coordinate with an agency that DDS works with in your area, and they do the shared living matching. So we had looked into shared living. We were going to work with the Charles River Center in Needham. Will ended up purchasing this condo before he was finished, before he was 22 with school. And so what we did was we used school funding, but we hired adult service agencies using the school funding. So for any of you with children under age 22, this is a whole nother discussion, but I highly suggest this model. It helps to bridge the transition from education to the adult service world, and it allows you to experiment with and get to know some of the adult service agencies. And we were able to do that. We worked with 2 or 3 day programs, and we worked with 2 different agencies we were entertaining to manage Will's living situation. And we were going to do shared living for the last 2 years of his educational entitlement, but that fell through. So anyway, what does, oh, go ahead. Okay. What does PCA stand for, and how do you qualify? So PCA stands for personal care attendants. You have to have some type of a physical or medical need. So if your loved one takes medication or needs help bathing, or I have to look through the different requirements, and I can send the link, but it is a program. You apply, they come out and decide, what your level of need is. And there is a funding stream to hire personal care attendants to help with activities of daily living. Because Will did not get residential support through DDS, they will not allow us to use his funding for anything that's happening in his condo. So we can't use his day funding to help cook meals, to clean up around the house, to help him bathe, to help clean out his CPAP machine. Those are all things that DDS won't allow because that's considered residential based supports. That's what we use PCA funding for, filling up his medication boxes, things like that. And based on your level of need, that determines how much support you get through PCA. How do you fund the care staffing? So the gentleman that lives with my son right now, he is paid through PCA. PCA also has a program, 2 hours a night is all they allow. That's the maximum support at night for someone. So we do get that. And then the day hours. So that is how the roommate is funded. The MRC stands for Mass Rehab Commission, which is, they deal with not necessarily people who have developmental disabilities, are much broader. Like if someone were to have a stroke and needed rehab to get back at work and figure out how to start doing public transportation, they do a wide range of services. But for our population, they do provide job support, and they do have this program. It's pretty new to me, so we're in the process, that does provide in-home support. I did not know about that. So for anybody on this call, I'll let you guys know how I make out, but it's another revenue stream. Great question from Lauren about how to find people. I think that's one of the hardest parts, and it typically, I have not had luck going through care.com and some of the sites. There are sites that exist where you can go on and put in an ad and people respond. I did find one person that way. Usually it's through networking. I love and hate Facebook, but I do use it, and I've had a lot of success that way, reaching out to my network. I also find that if you have a child in a day program, or if they go to, one of my son's support workers is a support staff at a band program he does on the weekends. And a lot of the people that work there are teachers and therapists. So I put it out there, I'm looking for more help, and oh, I know somebody. So you'd be surprised. The gentleman who lives with my son right now, I was complaining in the lobby of the place where he lives to someone that the young man living with my son was not working out. He was not very responsible, and we were going to have to start looking again. And Brian, who was the concierge at the building, said, well, what are you looking for? And I proceeded to tell him, and he said, well, I live with Will, I'm living at my mom's now, and it would be a win-win. I wouldn't have to commute to work. And 5 years later, they've been together. So you just don't know. And so that's I think, and my one piece of advice here is that your loved one needs to be part of the process. They need to feel a connection with that person. As much as we can, sometimes I've thought, oh, this person would work well, really until William and that person interact. That's when I know. So usually I'll have that person come over and meet them, and then I'll leave for a while and then come back. For both of them, right? Do a trial if they're willing. You mentioned AFC, our daughter has that, and we have been told the max is $600 a month, and you mentioned So there are two levels, Dick, for AFC. There's the level 1 and level 2, and you're probably on the lower level. So I would, you know, if you can go on the website and look a little more at how they determine, it's really all about need. If there are any issues that have happened recently, any new things, any missed medications, any challenges, any new developments on your end with your ability to care for your loved one, those are all reasons to appeal and reapply. So I have known many families who have been able to increase their AFC from the lower level to the higher level.
I also thought there was about if you were in a group setting or not, it's different levels. Like if she's in a residential, a group AFC, isn't that a different funding?
It might be, yes. I think there is. And I also know that they have changed. So we did AFC about 6 years ago. It was a while. So there could be updates. And frankly, they may only have one level now too, but I am pretty sure, because I did work with a family not long ago that successfully appealed an increase, but that person was living at home. So that's a good point, Yaffa. I hadn't thought of that. But it is a great way, you know, if your loved one has some independent living skills and you can create a living situation with a couple people, combining AFC group, it's a great solution. You know, it's where's the housing going to be, right? Like what's the physical space? And that's tricky. How do you apply for affordable housing? Where do you learn about the lotteries? Okay, so the information about the program itself is on the DHCD website, so you can read about it and learn about it. As far as how to find out when units come up for rent or when there are new projects, that is a little trickier. Some of it's on the website. They have listings of properties for sale. There are also a couple of real estate companies. One of them is called Maloney Properties that seem to have the, at least in this general area, get a lot of the listings. So I'm on a mail list and I get emails all the time about new lotteries coming up, both rentals and purchases. And I think if you call or reach out to DHCD, tell them where you live and ask who manages the lotteries, what real estate agencies manage them, they can provide that to you. And then calling that real estate agency and saying, hey, look, I've got this son or daughter and we're interested. Could you add us to your mail list? What do you currently have available? Also the towns, we in the process of trying to figure this out, I didn't even know it existed in our town, but there was something called the Wellesley Real Estate Development Department or something, some branch of town government that manages housing. I would highly suggest going to meet with that person. I had met with our state rep, and she was the one that told me about that and suggested I go meet with them. And that was very informative. And I was able to learn more about like the Section 8 housing, because Wellesley didn't have its own housing authority. It was combined with some other towns. And in our discussion, she told me that there was someone whose job was to increase the amount of affordable housing in Wellesley. And that person would work with developers and figuring out ways to get that percentage up because they care and it's the right thing to do. And they knew they were below the state threshold. And they had bought a house. I remember at the time I first met with her, I was shocked. They had just bought a single family home on a nice little quiet street not far from where we live that they were converting to a home for 4 disabled adults. I think working with your town, especially if your loved one has grown up there and lived there and you've lived there a long time and being a taxpayer, and, going in and just asking, what's going on, what programs might exist is always a good way. What does the self-direction look like in Mass? What does he do every day? So, Karen, are you in Mass or you're in Rhode Island?
So yeah, my daughter, well, we have self-directed, but we have an agency that manages all the funding. So she goes to a day program, and she also has after, she has nighttime supports and weekend supports. They pay and they manage everything. So I don't manage any money. I just have to do time.
So that's like agency with choice, I think is what we call it here in Massachusetts.
She goes 5 days a week to an agency,
Yep.
and then she has 32 hours after of support,
That's awesome.
community support.
Okay.
Yeah.
I mean, to be honest, that's really what I wanted for William, but he just couldn't. We tried 3 different day programs and he just wouldn't do it. So we had to bail. But we have, within DDS, you can do self-directed funding and you can do agency with choice, which you end up having an agency and they manage all of that and they hire all the people, or you can just completely do self-direction. I'm not going to lie. Our model is, if I drop dead tomorrow, the wheels off the bus are coming off the bus. So that is my, charge. And I've been putting new things in place so that that won't be the case. And I felt confident we're going to be able to do that. But in our situation, there were just things that weren't working, and I needed to, make sure William was happy, and he works a good amount. So it was hard to find an agency that was willing to support him and do both. So I wanted to see how much we could get out of the work from him and give him a couple years. But yeah.
Yeah. Well, Rachel has her own business. So that's what I've been managing, is her business.
That's amazing.
Because she's an artist. So she has an art business online and she paints. And so that's been like taking her artwork to galleries and mail order and website design and stuff.
But you manage it all.
But I'm managing that.
Yeah. It's hard. I think that I don't think that the self-direction, it's unfortunate that there's some programs in the autism community. I don't know how many of you have loved ones. Is she on the spectrum?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. I know AANE, they have a program, and I actually tried to convince them to let me try it with Will, because he's not, and they wouldn't. But they do have a management type of program. I'll have to get the name. Let me make a note to myself. I want to say the word life is in it, but you pay them a certain amount a year, and they kind of oversee things. And I think that's the missing piece with DDS, frankly.
That's what we have. They take a stipend from her funding.
Yep.
And it goes to pay for them to manage everything.
All right.
But we do the hiring. We do the hiring for her, her people.
Yeah. And I think it's, there's a good piece of control for that, right? But then again, it takes a lot of time and effort, and then if someone doesn't show up, right. Let me just see what, if you're supported by these, but it's not working out, other options like the supportive living fund available. So, Luis, if you're supported by DDS for residential, so you have priority 1 funding, is that what it means?
Husband's name on the, I'm Rachel.
Oh,
It's
okay.
I'm not Luis. I forgot to change my name on the.
That's all right. I go by Liz, not Elizabeth too. So
I go by Rachel, not Luis.
Okay. Hi, Rachel.
So no, I'm just kidding. But anyway, yeah, she's priority 1 DDS. It's my sister, actually. My parents are on the call as well. We're both guardians. We're all guardians.
All right. So she has priority 1. She's in a residential situation that's not working. Okay. And does DDS know it's not working? I mean, you've told them you're not happy over and over.
Well, she has to. They closed her. Among other things, they closed the program, the house, so she has to leave.
Yep. Well, I think that yes, of course, there are other options. I mean, I think that if I would sit down and start with DDS, and obviously, I don't know your sister, but knowing what her needs are, does she need to be will she be happy in a group home with several other people? there are group homes that have stayed open and are opening up again. Or would shared living be an option? Would they consider doing, there is, DDS does provide, we were trying to get DDS to give us family support so that in the condo that Will was going to buy, we could hire an agency like the Charles River Center and get family support and have them manage it. And that's eventually, I think, what's going to happen with William when my husband and I are no longer able to. But, you need a physical place to do that.
What do you
So,
call that? What do you call that program?
which program? I'm
So
forgetting.
that you were going to ask DDS to do with at the apartment?
Family support, I think it's family support.
Okay,
Yeah.
thank you.
Yep. If you go onto DDS's website under residential, they talk about, but you can't get that unless you have priority one. So I couldn't get it. But if you can get that funding, I mean, even you could get that in your own home. Is she living with you now?
No, she lives in a group home.
Yeah. Okay. I thought it wasn't. Okay. Well, there are a lot of options. I mean, obviously you got to work with them, but Section 8 voucher, if you can find another apartment, keep talking to people. That's how I keep learning of things. What's the umbrella organization under which this affordable housing can be found? Department of Housing and Community Development, DHCD. Yeah, why am I not typing? Okay. And I can send you guys the link. If I start looking for it now, it's going to take me a few minutes, but where am I here? Is there a house manager in our situation? Nope, that would be me right now. And again, that would be down the road when he gets priority one to have someone oversee it. I don't want to de-emphasize. I mean, Will does have a case manager through DDS. I spoke to her today at length, and she knows about his living situation and follows what's going on in all parts of his life. So they're very aware of what's going on for him. And I like it that way. So I keep sharing with them so that when the time does come, because it will come, they'll need to deal with it. All these programs and figure out what's out there. It's not clear to me. So is it Marilee about how did I find out about all these programs?
Yes, I'm beginning, my son's 20 and I'm overwhelmed.
Yeah, you and the rest. It's, the reason I started doing what I'm doing is because the process is awful. I mean, it is so convoluted. And I mean, there are a lot of different groups out there. There's, a guy named Michael Weiner, and he runs it was called Creating Housing Opportunities. And I used to go listen, much like this. It started out as a small group and it blossomed, and I'd go listen and I'd listen and I'd listen. And I went to a lot of conferences, Mass Families Organizing for Change and the Federation and the ARC, and what was the one? Yeah, the whole model that we created for William was because I went to one of these conferences and there was a mom and a gentleman from an agency presenting on a model they created called 20 at 22, where they fast forwarded the transition and used school funding to create a living situation for their son, and the school district supported that. And I thought, this is brilliant. This is what we need to do. Why should he move out of our home into a school when he's only going to then want to move out again, and yada, yada. So at the end of the day, it's doing exactly what you're doing tonight, logging in, listening to me. I'm happy. I meet with families individually. I can point you in different directions, based on where you live. Going and meeting with different agencies, talking to other families about what's worked and what hasn't worked for them. And again, like I said at the beginning, our guys are all so different. Their needs are different. We're all different. What our expectations are different. Our financial means are different. But there is I have to say there's a lot out there, but it's not streamlined at all. And it's hard to put all the pieces together. So don't give up. Just keep doing what you're doing today, and I'm happy to answer any follow-up questions. Oh, LifeNet. Thank you, Lauren. Yes, that's the program. Please tell us about what you are doing. Marina, does this mean what I'm doing professionally or what I'm doing on this call right now?
No, I meant like specifically for your son. And, I just want to make sure we get to that. I'm very interested to hear what your arrangement is.
As far as his housing situation. Okay, so he lives in this condo in Wellesley Center. Maybe I didn't get specific enough on it. I apologize. So this, we purchased this condo. He purchased this condo. We had to find a bank to give him a mortgage, and they were willing to do it. His mortgage payment is $530 a month. His condo fee is $80. And then he's got a few other odd and end bills. So, you can see how that becomes manageable. He lives there with the gentleman who's the concierge in the building, and he sleeps there every night with my son. He gives him his medicine. He sets up his CPAP machine. They watch Celtics games, play video games. He gives him his dinner that has been prepped by someone during the day. He makes sure he goes to bed when he's supposed to go to bed, and that he's bathed and knows what his plans are for the morning, and whether the ride's coming or what his calendar is. Check in with me. So that's the live-in caregiver's responsibility. Fortunately, my son sleeps. I do have a camera in his room for safety, and I don't use it often, but there have been times I haven't been able to reach him and he needs to be up. He can be alone for an hour or two or three. In the morning when he gets up, pre-COVID, he would go to work 2 days a week, and he would take the ride to work. Someone came in the morning and helped him. We used PCA funding for that. Helped him get dressed, get up, goodbye, pack your lunch, see you later. He'd come home from work, someone else would be there. And he could come home and the house could be empty. It was okay, but they would come over a little later, help him do meal prep for dinner or exercise. He had activities in the evening. He's in a band in Brookline. So there's a gentleman I hired who happened to be a musician that knew him. So on Tuesdays, Dan would come and they do band night, and he would take him, and that was that. He plays sled hockey on the weekends. He's on an adaptive sled hockey team. We do the weekend support. When we were negotiating with DDS, I realized you can't hand it all over to them. So, there's plenty on my calendar that I end up doing. He goes to physical therapy. He has a pretty rich and full life. Other than having a girlfriend. He really wants a girlfriend. If any of you have any 20-something girls looking for, give me a call.
Well, that's why he's in the Healthy Relationships class.
Oh, thank you for reminding me. As you know, right? Well, yeah. So that's what we're doing. The condo is a miracle. I mean, it is really a miracle. And I don't know a lot of families that have utilized this model. And like I said, if you don't have the income stream, but if you can, if your child does work, this is the answer. I cannot say enough good things about this program. It's his in perpetuity, the relief that I feel knowing he has a safe place over his head. And what I love is that this is a place, he can't generalize skills well, but he's been here 5 years, and I'm we've been able to teach him and create systems for him there. Whether it's his laundry or, the gym that he goes to, he's building routines for life, and there's a familiarity, and no one can take it away from him. It's a great safety net. So it is a fabulous model. The DHCD Affordable Housing Rental Program, a lot of the properties that I've seen on that mail list that I get are very, like the new buildings down at Fenway Park, and very expensive. So even though they're reduced from the $3,500 monthly to $1,800, that's still a lot a month. So, it's a different model. Did I answer your question, Marina? Yeah? Okay. 3 new messages. 2022. Oh, thank you, Rachel. Again, like this is just, I'm like all of you. So, it's overwhelming. And DDS, we went all the way to fair hearing with DDS. So I know how intimidating they can be. And I think that at the end of the day, when your loved one's needs aren't being met, you just don't stop and you tell them that. And that's their job. And they want to put they have such limited resources. I get it. But it's not about putting, filling a spot. It's about finding the right fit for our guys as best we can. And sometimes they forget that. And, I guess that's our job to keep fighting the good fight. But I get it. It is intimidating. I got a bad email today I'm forgetting about already. They want to take half of his budget away from him this year because, we haven't been able to spend it because a couple of his people quit because of COVID. And I'm like, no, that's his budget. Like, I've got other plans. But the 2022 model, Pam, a life-changing thing for us. And I really would love to jump off the call at some point and talk to you. But essentially, we ended up, my son's needs were not being met in his transition program. And, we were desperately looking for a residential school for him, and there was nothing that made sense. The school district tried to force inappropriate placement on us. We had to go through BSEA. It was ugly. And we won, we prevailed. And it afforded us the chance to do what we'd been asking them to do, which was because we didn't have a residential program, guess what? We just won this housing lottery. Let's create his fast forward life now. And so the person I learned it from was a SPED director in a district. So there are good SPED directors out there who are visionary enough to see the value in this. And there's a funding stream for reimbursement for it. And essentially what you do is, and I talk about this with families all the time, is you start bridging that transition to the adult service world. So whether it's starting to incorporate some of the day programs that you might be considering, even in the afternoon, or having things in the community that you might want your child to do that are some of the activities that adults might be doing, or vocationally starting, if your child's going to be working, identifying a work agency and finding an internship and having an adult service agency that would be working with your kids, supporting them. I know a lot of the pre-ETS programs. Do you have a pre-ETS program in there? Let's see Pam's face. A lot of the schools now, oh, there you are up there, sorry. Do you have pre-ETS in your school? Is that, no? What school district? I think you're on mute.
There we go. We're in Lexington, but Henry now goes to Neshoba Learning Group.
Okay. So do they do vocational things? Is he on
They do vocational, but everything was put on hold because of COVID. So everything except for in-school vocational, mimicking a real job kind of stuff that they can do in a classroom, because he can't really they can't do much because of COVID. So he was supposed to be in a paying job this year and it all got canceled.
So did the job cancel him, or did the school cancel the support for him to have?
School will not let them into the community because of COVID.
Yeah. So, I mean, I this is a question actually, I don't know the answer to, because it might be a liability if school funds are used to do this. So that is something, you know, I'm gonna email somebody about that because I don't know the answer and I'm really curious. But it would seem to make sense that if the school funds are reimbursed to you, right? Because I mean, he's missing his, you know, these are important years. So if you were able to find him a job and you were able to find a local agency that provides vocational support, and there are plenty of them, you know, could you get him back in the job through this agency and pay them privately and get reimbursed? Why not? I mean,
Possibly.
it seems fairly reasonable if you're not, you know, if they're not paying directly. I would email your SPED director and just put it out there. And if the job is still available,
I'd have to find the job because the school has the relationships with the different organizations. So
Okay.
I would have to find a job for him and find the job coach that could work with him. And there'd be this whole learning of Henry to get them up to speed. So I keep hoping that COVID will end.
Okay, but
and
here's,
there.
but this is this ties into the very question you just asked me. This is where you're going anyway.
Right.
So in a way, it's in a really strange way, it could be a blessing for you to rethink it and say, you know what, this is the next phase for us. I need to be thinking this way. It is, I had blogged for a while ago, and I found the whole, I called it inclusion for exclusion. I mean, what our kids get in special education and what happens when they turn 22 is disgraceful. And aside from the fact that the, you know, it isn't their right and it's no longer, you know, an entitlement and all that, the quality of the staff that we work with, and many of them are well-meaning, but they don't have the special ed training and background to be with our guys. And so I think our kids feel it, they know it. And the number of programs and the richness in opportunities when they're students, so much of that evaporates. And there's a sadness that can come over them too. And, you know, I think all of us as parents, you know, we kill ourselves trying to figure out opportunities and ways to, you know, make their lives richer, but it is so wrong. It is a crazy program when you think about, and I've often said, you know, I almost wish that we could have taken all the money that he got since he was a baby to 22 and put it in a big pot and shaken it up over a much longer stretch of years, because their disabilities don't go away, right?
Right. They seem to get worse.
Well, they do, because they don't have the supports that they've had, and we're tired and we're older and we don't have the stamina we had. But I do think for you, I would turn this around and be like, you know, and I'm happy to talk to you more, but I think this is exactly where I was at. Like, okay, I don't have a program that, like, start creating his adult world. What is it going to look like? Right? Is he going to work 2 days a week? Who's going to support him in that job? Where should he be working? And, you know, my son's best jobs, and I'm going to say this and you're all going to be like, I mean, he wanted to work in professional sports, as you see behind me. And we would go to meetings and he said, I want to be a professional athlete, you know, and he was and people would nod. And one of his well-meaning teachers said, you've got to start making more realistic expectations for him. And so I moved him to another program where the head of the transition program had come from Jewish Vocational Services. She was a job coach and she believed he had potential. And she called me one day. She goes, we're going on an interview at Gillette Stadium. And I said, what are you talking about? And she said, no, they have some jobs. I think he could do it. Well, wouldn't you know, he gets a job. And this was 8 years ago as a ticket taker at Gillette Stadium, where he has worked for 8 years. And 2 years later, he said, I want to work at Fenway Park. And he did an interview and he got himself a job at Fenway Park, where he has now worked for 6 years. And his idol is Tom Brady. And he ended up going in there to do some therapy once and ended up going back many times. And now he works for Tom Brady at one of his sports therapy centers 1 day a week. So nothing is impossible. I think when we listen to our loved ones' dreams and what they are, we can sort of feel like, but miraculously, I think if we follow the passion and what they want, you can find things. You can. So there is some hope. Just a lot of work. Won't lie about that. Yachad, can you use a little more? Yachad is programs for adults every weekday afternoon, and I know, and I
Just wanted to add that in.
no, and I haven't even had time to look. Will you send me that schedule again? I have to look. So
Yeah.
yes,
No
and
problem.
this is another example of networking with. Well, actually, he had done the Jewish Big Brother program, and his big brother left, which was the best thing that happened because we ended up doing this. So, or found out about you, and so yes.
So that's really interesting because I didn't know about the Jewish Big Brother program, and I love the Yachad programs, but have no way to get him to Brookline every day after school. So it's not accessible, so to speak, except for virtually.
I know that is the interesting. I have to say, I feel like this has been a bit of a blessing for our guys because at least now I feel like I think Zoom will stick around for some of these programs.
I think so too.
Like
I think so too.
getting him places at night was so hard, but now that he can log on at 5 and I can put it in the calendar and he can be with a group of people and connect, it's pretty magical. So yeah. I don't see any more questions.
Pam, I can connect you with Jewish Big Brother, Big Sister too, if you want more info about that.
I feel like
Can I ask a question?
Of course.
Sorry, I've been trying. Usually I just interrupt people all the time, which is why Yaffa keeps muting me. So I had a couple questions. One, I'll ask the first one, which is, you may not know this, but I had to declare my daughter as a dependent in order to get her on Mass Health, which I think probably would disqualify me for a lot of these services, right?
Well, wait, so first question, how old is she?
She's 24.
Okay, so to get her on Mass Health, so do you have her on your private health insurance?
I had her on my private health insurance, but I was told that there were I'm way behind, so that comes to my next question. I was told there were 3 things I had to do, and one of them was to get her, do the Section 8, which I did a long time ago. Another one was to get her on Mass Health, because she would get better benefits than my private insurance. And then the third had to do with SSDI.
Yeah, SSI so she doesn't have SSI yet?
No, she was
Yeah,
rejected and I never did anything about it. And she was even rejected from the, whatever the initials are. She didn't qualify because she's not on the spectrum, but I need to debate that, or whatever the word is, to argue that. But which brings me to my real question beyond this, which is probably not your area of expertise, but when I think it was Karen who asked the question, what do you do? And you said, well, do you mean, what do I do for a job? Is this what you do for a job now?
It is. It kind of, so I used to work in marketing and advertising with nonprofits, and then Will was born, and I just threw myself into this and, was very involved and chaired the SPED packs and blah, blah, blah. And then I went back to work about 2 or 3 years ago. A friend of mine had said it was a company that was doing college placement kind of stuff, and I couldn't take it. When I had this parent yelling at me that their kid didn't get into Yale and they wanted hard, and I just, what am I doing? And in my free time, I was constantly getting bombarded with friends of mine asking me questions about this stuff, and I'm always doing it. And I was like, okay, I can't keep giving my time away. I don't have any more time, so I just kind of started doing it. So yes, this is what I do now. I founded something called Bridge 22 about 1.5 years ago. I'm contemplating going to work for a local neuropsychologist in part of his practice, but I do consult. I'm a parent transition coach, and I don't want to be an advocate. I have no desire. I went through years of litigation with BSEA and DDS, and I feel like knowledge is power, and I want to help families avoid having to potentially have to take legal action. And I think if you can be armed with all the information and feel empowered to be able to advocate and stand up to intimidating people and learn about other families doing things that you didn't know about, that those are all ways to avoid the legal process. And there are some great lawyers and advocates I know out there, so I don't need to reinvent the wheel. So yes, this is what I do professionally now.
Yeah, are you going to send that contact? I actually think, Liz,
Yes.
Does your friend that you just mentioned live in Marblehead, and did she just move from Wellesley in like the last 2 years?
Oh my God, which friend? I'm thinking.
I don't know. You've mentioned a friend. Now I can't even remember. I'm so tired right now. I can't even tell you.
It's okay.
I actually was talking to someone about a month ago, and I think she was talking about you. She moved from Wellesley, and her son is somewhere between my daughter's age and your son's age.
Oh, I think I do know who you might be talking about.
Joan? Do you know Joan?
Joan. Yes. Yeah. Yeah. That's so
She's talking
funny.
about you.
Yeah,
But
yeah.
if we could, yeah, that would help me because I'm kind of paralyzed, overwhelmed with all of the things that I'm managing right now. And so that particular service that you just described is having that one person who could guide me through that process. And I'm sure lots of us on this call feel the same way. That would be amazing.
Yeah, I think I will send something out that I've been putting together, and I'll get some links from Liz before I send it out. So it has all of our info, all of our ideas, and we can continue this discussion next month too. There's some people on the call. Donna Goldman hasn't had a chance to speak yet, but she did amazing work with Meredith, our daughter, forming a group home, and it's amazing. And you know, there's a lot of people that we can hear from that have other expertise too. Liz, this has been amazing. Before we go, Stacy has her hand raised. Can we do one more question?
Yeah, sure.
And yeah, so how does that sound to everybody? Because it's getting late. Good, okay.
Hi, I can't see all the different people, so I don't know who's speaking. The person that said that they needed to put Mass Health on their daughter on her Mass Health, she can apply on her own. And sometimes when you apply to Mass Health as a person with a disability, sometimes it will funnel you directly to SSI, and you'll kind of back end getting approved for SSI, which is the easy way of doing it rather than directly applying. And and I kind of missed this part, if you did apply to SSI and you got denied, I don't know where you live, but if you live in you can go to any of the independent living centers. So if you live in like the Newton Wellesley area, you can go to BCIL, Boston Center for Independent Living, and they'll help you apply for SSI. So that may be a way to get services. And then you can also, okay, yes. Yeah, it works both ways, believe it or not. Because I had a friend that applied for Mass Health because her daughter had some complex medical issues, and she got an SSI 3 months before my son got, and he applied like 4 months earlier.
Wow. Yeah, I did it. I just did everything wrong. I got rejected, didn't do anything about that because of, it's kind of a complicated story, but so that was SSI, and then she was approved for Mass Health, and that's just it. And now she won't even go to the doctor anyway.
So if you want to reapply to SSI, where do you live?
We're in Marblehead.
I don't know whatever if you want to pass my name on, Yachad, to her, I can figure out which independent living center is closest to you, and they'll help you apply.
Oh, thank you.
By the way, I just want to say that SSI is notorious for rejecting people's first application. And very typically when you reapply, you get it. So unfortunately, this happens all the time with families, but it's a very, very common experience.
Okay, thank you.
Absolutely. And the independent living centers, I don't know how they know. They can get more information than we can. So
that would be
even when you have SSI, we had an issue where they gave us a bolus of money because it went back. It took 9 months to get SSI, and they went back to your first application date. and they gave us this bolus of money, which you're supposed to have, I forgot, let's say 6 months to use or a year. And I was supposed to have like a year, let's say, to use it based on the paperwork. And a month later, they saw that money in the account and they canceled his SSI and sent me all kinds of threatening letters.
Because you had too much money.
Because I had too much money in the account, which is what the money that they put in there. And I had to go down with all the paperwork and show them that I was supposed to have a year or 9 months or whatever to use the money.
They're awful.
And then they had to reinstate everything. But first you have to take a day out of work and you have to go sit there and wait to get your name called again. And it was a royal pain. But yes, they
And also know that you may not have done anything wrong when you applied for SSI. Sometimes people get rejected purely because the doctor didn't return the letter.
No.
And it has nothing to do with anything you did.
Yeah, I mean,
they lost original paperwork. They were horrible to deal with.
you guys all know about the ABLE Act?
No.
Okay. Yeah. Yeah, we've, because of Will's irregular jobs, I mean, I can't even tell you how many times we've gotten letters, we're cutting him off, so they're impossible. Don't beat yourself up, Pamela. You'll, make it work, but once you get in, you may wish you never got started with them.
Well, thank you.
Well, thank you. I appreciate
Thank you, Liz.
meeting all of you.
You consult for people other than the transition time, 22?
Sure. I mean, I don't, I think I don't know what I don't know. My son's 25, 26, so I haven't experienced anything beyond that age. I think I'm a very good advocate and I'm very resourceful and I help families get answers to things and I've lived here my whole life. So I'm happy to try to help. And I always do a call with people, if any of you want to talk to me, we can do a free consult call and, figure out if it makes sense and tell me more what you're specifically looking for help with. And if it's doesn't feel like a right fit on my end, I might know somebody else or have another suggestion. I like to do it I feel like I was like spending all my time doing it and I love sharing what I've learned. And I also learn a lot in the process because it's, I learned things tonight from all of you. And I think that it's this great network and we all need to rely on each other for this information. So.
Thank you again. Thank you, Liz. And
Thank you,
everybody for coming and sharing. And
Thank you.
Thank you.
Great
I
to
hope
meet you
everyone
all.
stays well and safe and healthy. And hopefully we'll see you all next month and we can continue this discussion.
Great.
Thanks,
Thank you.
Yaffa.
Bye-bye, everybody.
Bye.
Bye. Remove.